out to him. It was the idea of framing. And before I get into that and explaining what framing is, I want to share three things about myself. My name's Sean O'Connor. I'm the Minister of Truth for Solarius, a new decentralized application to reinvent collective storytelling. As the marketing lead, I spend a lot of time thinking about how we position our platform to artists, authors, and consumers. The second thing, I've spent all of my career launching early stage tech products into the market. And when you hear the statistic that 95% of new products fail, I think that holds true for pretty much every project I've worked on to date. The third thing is I've seen a direct correlation to deeply understanding your users and launching products that really scale and succeed in market. So with that, I want to jump in and talk a little bit about framing and user onboarding. So this is a question I often ask of my team, my colleagues, and other products. Do your users actually care? And they do, but primarily about their own problems. Nobody owes us their attention or their time. And if your idea is important enough to build, then it's really important that you take the time to also build a case for why it matters to your users. You know, everyone is busy. They have a million things going on in their life. And it's really important that you position your products in a way that gets your user to care. So it's all about how you frame your product in a way that solves your user's problem. And frames are really important. As you can see here, a quick mock-up, 3 different frames take one image and give you a very different feel for how it's presented. And framing your product from your call to action to your visual identity to your copywriting can be the make or break between a product that scales and one that nobody cares about. The sad truth is the best products rarely scale. It's the products that resonate most with users. So before we dive in, I want to talk a little bit about milkshakes and the idea of framing. McDonald's enlisted the help of a Clay Christensen fellow, the Harvard Business School professor, to do some research and help them figure out what was going on inside of their stores. So this guy spent the better part of a week sitting in a McDonald's all day, every day, and just keeping track of sales and inventory. And he found that 40% of milkshake sales were purchased right in the morning by commuters who ordered them to go. And with that insight, McDonald's realized there was a market opportunity to reframe the milkshake into something more. And they launched a line of breakfast smoothies. And they did that because they realized that the milkshake was solving a problem for users. They were commuting to and from work. They needed a quick, affordable meal, something they could consume while they were driving in their car. And we've all seen that now Starbucks is shutting down stores, and in large part because of the success of McDonald's Cafe. And that one insight of how they frame a milkshake in a new breakfast drink has spawned a multi-million-dollar product line for this company. So Miller's Law is something else I want to talk about. In order to understand what another person is saying, you must assume that it is true and try to imagine what it could be true of. And this is really just a fancy way of saying the customer is always right. And you need to deeply listen to your customers, have empathy for what they're saying, and try to understand what their needs, their wants, and their desires are so that you can frame your solutions in a way that will better resonate with them. So how do you put this into practice? Defining personas is one of the best ways you can start to really codify this into an easy and accessible way and something that you can share across the entire team. So your personas, who are your users? What do they do? What do they have? What do they face? How do they dress? What do they care about? Think of specific people, not just masses, because if you can build a product with one individual in mind and solve his or her problems, then you have a chance of it solving other people's problems and actually scaling out beyond that. And it's important to do this that you have to talk to humans. You know, reach out to users of your dApp, recruit 10 of them for a 30-minute interview. Maybe you want to incentivize them with an Amazon gift card or some ETH, and you're looking to get narratives out of people. You want to ask a lot of open-ended questions, and I'll point you to some resources at the end of this deck that might help you diving into user experience researching if you're new to that. Ask questions that begin with walk me through. So walk me through opening up the Bounties network, and what are you seeing step by step? And tell me about the last time you used the app. What were you thinking of, etc. And you want to distill these down into personas. And I often find that in doing this research, you come across insights that you can paraphrase, steal from, and turn into your own marketing copy. And that is often the best converting marketing copy you have, just taking the words directly from the mouth of your users. And always ask people, can you say that another way? Ask that of your colleagues, of your research participants, etc. So the essence of metaphors is understanding and experiencing one kind of thing in terms of another. George Lakoff is an academic and a researcher who writes a lot about the way that humans understand and process language. He wrote a really interesting book called Metaphors We Live By. And metaphors are part and parcel to how humans think and how we engage. And they're often a shortcut for thinking. So, we all have heard the Uber for X example. And what might this one be? Uber for dogs. So it's a service to provide you a dog sitter or to take your pet to the vet. Maybe it's an on-demand app to bring you a doggo to play with. In 3 words, you have a very general understanding of what this could be, and you instantly know if you want to learn more. So as you're explaining your application to users, look for metaphors that they're telling you during research interviews and test those out on your landing pages. See if those lead to better conversion or if they help users more quickly understand what you're trying to get at, what problems you're solving. So ask yourself, what are the metaphors you heard during those UX interviews? And then you want to distill these down into personas. Here's a persona we built at Solarius. This was based upon talking to about 5 different artists that we've been working with. And there's a couple things I want to point out here. So we've all heard the stereotype of a starving artist, right? It's quite reductive, and there's a lot more to unpack and a lot more nuance than just the starving artist. And I believe the participants in the Solarius universe and ecosystem will have a lot more nuanced motivations than just trying to make a few dollars. So from speaking to a handful of artists, we started to see some trends. They're creative, smart, typically punctual. They have deadlines that they're always trying to meet. Age range tended to be on the younger side, living in major cities. They work in creative fields, but often juggle a couple different jobs to meet rent in these expensive cities. Their wants and needs are a way to pay bills, a new platform, ways to promote their creative work, a community of peers that can help them to level up and improve their skills. And they want to have people engage with their work. One of the most depressing things an artist told me was, when she puts a post on Instagram and it doesn't get any hearts, she cries. Behaviors they tend to be early adopters. They're willing to engage with new technology platforms. They love sci-fi, grew up on Vonnegut, Asimov, Tolkien, have active social media. They're used to publishing on WordPress and Medium. And that insight, when several artists were talking about WordPress and Medium, made our tech team spend a lot more time engaging with those platforms that understand their user experience dynamics, so we could try and make our app feel familiar to creators who are used to working in such and such a platform. Pain points, FOMO is huge, fear of missing out on the next big trend. She saw her friends who were early adopters on Instagram and they have tens of thousands of followers. Has limited time, has trouble becoming a full-time writer, is still doing other things to try and pay the bills. and hates bureaucratic established media, is a part of the Me Too movement and is trying to change the way that creative narratives are made. I'm going to pause now. Any questions so far? Cool. So one framework I use a lot is ADA. And ADA stands for attention, interest, desire, and action. This is one of the most powerful copywriting formulas ever created, and it's used in a lot of direct response copywriting. So the core essence of this formula is, how do you grab someone's attention, get them interested, create desire, and compel them to act? And I'm going to walk you through an example now of how this whole meetup that we're doing right now actually came to be. So it all started with a tweet. I saw this pop up in my Twitter feed on June 11th. Simona had retweeted from the Bounties Network that they were putting together a new bounty to create a video map of the world. I had just met Simona at Ethereal. I really was impressed by her. We had a great conversation. So she had my attention. A decentralized video map of the world, that personally sparked my interest. As somebody who's lived in several different countries, has spent a lot of time traveling, I was really curious what this would look like. So I had the desire to check out a live dApp. I'd never been on the Bounties platform before, and I wanted to try it out. And there was a specific call to action. Submit a video of a place that matters to you. So I clicked on the link to learn more. And this is what I saw. So I thought to myself, what's this page for? I unlocked my MetaMask account, and I started diving into it. And as I was doing that, I was taking screenshots along the way and sent Simona a bit of a teardown, asking her questions about the user experience. So what's the bounce rate from this screen? Are you catering to new or returning users? And if I'm a new user, do I know what MetaMask is, why I should use it? Should I hyperlink to MetaMask? What's my incentive to do so? So I came up with a bit of a mock-up of how I think this screen might come to life in a different way. If you'll see here, there's the Bounties logo up top. We have a strong call to action. I get excited because the decentralized video map for the world, the thing that interested me and compelled me to act, is hidden there. The bounties reinforces the value proposition, an open platform for earning bounties. Please unlock MetaMask to view this bounty. I know what I have to do. If you are new to the Bounties Network and need help to get started, start here. So as we're building dApps, it's really important that we always keep in mind, most people don't know what Ethereum is. Most people have a basic understanding of what Bitcoin is. I spent a couple hours a few weeks ago at the Computer Science New York City Career Fair, where about 3,000 New York City high school students who are studying computer science came and were learning about opportunities in technology. I spoke to about 300 students that day, and maybe 10% of them had heard of Bitcoin. Maybe 5 knew what Ethereum was, and only 1 or 2 had ever been on a dApp before. So it's important to keep in mind that while we are working in this ecosystem every single day, for most people, the idea of a dApp is completely new, and they're going to need a lot of handholding to get them over the hurdle of logging in MetaMask and going through all of those steps to set it up. But we need to focus on microcopy. Microcopy is a really powerful tool that helps us guide the user through our experience and our product. It's everything from the label on a form field to a piece of tiny instructional text or the words on a button. It's the little text that can make or break your user experience. So one example, on the Celerius Alpha application, the first thing we do is ask them their name. And then from there, we're able to inject their name into other questions that make it a more personalized experience. So when we ask them their email, we give them a reason why we need their email. This will be used to update you about your alpha application. And then there's a call to action of type your email in here. So whenever you're asking for sensitive information and people are very reticent to hand over their email, it's useful to really provide them with the why. And to continue to focus on the change you help your users to make. So understanding your different user groups, right? Going back to those personas and what their problems are, and then thinking about how your solution can be framed for each of those different groups. So reinforcing your value proposition, your solution, your framing throughout your dApp. How can you create small ways to delight users? I want to run through some common UX problems in dApps, but before I go through that, any questions so far?
Sean, I just wanted to say it's interesting and pretty cool to see, you know, some of your like observations on the Bounties network onboarding experience in particular. I don't know how much everyone knows that we're the Bounties network kind of undergoing sort of like a UX facelift kind of project right now for our Bounties network white label. And these are, you know, all kinds of things that we're considering like throughout the entire experience. And so it's really kind of, it's just assuring to hear, you know, someone else that has gone through the process and identified, you know, these opportunities for things like improving microcopy, you know, setting expectations for new users, motivating new users, for, you know, with, you know, improving the ways in which we articulate, you know, these new concepts to them, giving them paths forward versus just blocking them and not, you know, giving them a path forward through something that's going to probably be pretty unfamiliar to them. So yeah, I don't know. It's not really a question, just kind of a awesome observation.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I didn't realize you guys were undergoing a UX refresh.
Yeah.
And I will say, after I did that one bounty, I've now, in the last few weeks, have completed 3 or 4 additional ones. So you guys got me hooked.
Oh yeah, cool. Well done, well done.
So some of the common problems I've seen in dApps, key management, I think, is one of the biggest out there. Most people have around 90 passwords that they use. And I found a stat from phy.org that 1/3 of online purchases are abandoned at checkout because of passwords. And that's where Amazon has become so successful as an e-commerce retailer. There's so little friction in that buying experience versus most Shopify stores where you have to remember a specific login, etc. And I think this is really important as we're thinking about key management. We expect people to securely manage long, complex private keys. I know within Consensus, a lot of spokes are doing work to try and make key recovery easier, et cetera. But this is one of the biggest problems I see in the ecosystem. We, with Celarius, are trying to elevate the importance with microcopy. So letting people know upfront just how important remembering this key is by telling them straight up, if you lose this key, you lose your account and all access to whatever artwork assets you've created. Mobile responsiveness is, I think, the second biggest issue that dApps face. Half of internet access now comes from mobile devices, and dApps are almost exclusively accessed via desktop. MetaMask isn't yet compatible on mobile, and I think that's a big step for the ecosystem when we reach that. So I think we can message mobile users and, you know, create some splash screens. Let them know when they come to our site on a mobile browser that they have to access it on a desktop. Give them that information up front and maybe create some opportunities or ways for them to stay in touch or otherwise be a part of the network. Gas is a new concept to most people. So applications should suggest gas price ranges, give time approximations, upper and lower bounds, and convert it to fiat. Give people that sense of grounding in something they're familiar with. So I think MetaMask does a pretty good job of showing you the gas limit, the gas price, fees, what it would look like in USD. But still, even this screen is a little clunky. I don't necessarily, as a user, know what these long, complicated strings are. And for most people, it's a pretty intimidating thing to do a transaction for the first time on the Ethereum blockchain. And part of that goes back to long load time, hanging transactions. The first time I transferred an ETH from Coinbase to a hardware wallet, I was scared shitless. I thought I had just lost it. And then, 20 minutes later, I kept hitting refresh every few minutes. The ETH showed up in my hardware wallet, and I sighed and realized, okay, this actually went through. So people hate to wait. It causes them stress. But what they hate even more is the perception that they did something wrong. If you set their expectations appropriately, they'll tolerate the waiting, and it will make it a more bearable experience. So after submitting transactions, it's really important to give users a sense of how long something will take. I did a little mock-up here of telling somebody that, hey, your bounty has been submitted, and you could vary this message based upon network price and the gas they used to let them know about how long it will take. And if you have their email, potentially you can send them a confirmation, just like anytime I trade a stock on Schwab, they send me a confirmation after the trade clears. It would be great for dApps to do that same thing and be a nice full circle loop to close the transaction out. So I want to talk a little bit about structuring this in your org and how you actually put this into practice, because information without action is a waste of time. So thinking about this, who's responsible in your org for this? If it's everyone, it's likely no one. I think this typically falls under marketing or product, or where product marketing is a new emerging field. And what are the OKRs that align to this? So creating buyer and user personas could be a good OKR for this quarter. Customer journey mapping, having a set number of user experience interviews, managing conversion optimization and running tests. So actually getting into your app and running multivariate testing with copy to see if you can get a lift in conversion. Activations and engagement. So after you get somebody to sign up for your app, how engaged are they? And one small urging for designers is stop using lorem ipsum in your mockups. Take the step, create some actual copy for your design, and put real micro copy into the world. That'll help the entire process feel more real, from going from static design to clickable prototype to functioning application. And if you're starting your initial designs with real microcopy that's grounded in framing your solution to your personas, you'll be in a much better place to refine that as your application goes live. So some further reading, and Simona will send these slides out. There's a great class on Skillshare by Jack Zerby on mastering microcopy. Sarah Duty runs a great UX newsletter and has a full guide to running UX interviews that's really useful. The Jobs to Be Done methodology by Clay Christensen, that goes back to the milkshake example we went through earlier. Useronboard.com is full of great teardowns, so you can see somebody rip apart live applications and learn a lot about what to do or not do as you're structuring your user onboarding. And the book Metaphors We Live By, I think, is great. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen. I know this went a little bit quicker than anticipated, so I want to open this up for questions. Feel free to contact me. I'm happy to to spend some time looking through your dApp, etc. For bounties, if you want to be the first to know about new bounties and events like this, follow them on Twitter or join their Slack. And for Solarius, if you want to help start the decentralized renaissance and be part of the next generation of sci-fi storytelling, apply for our bounty or our alpha at solarius.network.